The biggest problem with 2011 style guns is the price, and oftentimes you give up quality if you go for an attractive price. And if you jump on a budget gun, then buying new magazines becomes an investment because even inexpensive 2011 magazines cost about 45 bucks a pop. The Platypus is a wide body 1911 that takes Glock mags, and as awesome as that gun is, it's got a pretty significant wait time if you can't find one on the shelf, and they're pretty tough to find on the shelf. The XP Pro is a collaboration with Fusion Firearms, a shop in Florida, and Ermox, a shop in Turkey, to produce an off-the-shelf Glock magazine modular grip wide body 1911. That is a lot of words to say, Glock Mag 2011. So we'll look at the XP Pro and compare it to my old Commander Platypus and the new 5-inch Platypus as well. So before we get going, Fusion Firearms is a brand you probably haven't heard of unless you live in the 1911 space. Bob Cerva started Fusion Firearms. They're down in Florida, and he used to be the president of Dan Wesson, so he's been in the 1911 game for a very, very long time. They're still producing custom and semi-custom guns out of their Florida-based shop. Bob worked with Ermox, a Turkish factory, in speccing out this gun, and it is built to his exact specifications with what he wanted, and it is a true collaboration. I say all that to say the service department on import guns can often be lacking, but because Fusion is already here and have trained gunsmiths, all of the support on this gun would be handled by guys who've been making 1911s for a very, very long time. So immediately with something like this, price and availability is probably at the tip of people's tongues. How much is it going to cost, and can I get one now? Now, YouTube, I'm going to say prices. This is not in an attempt to sell firearms, you knucklehead, but there are two versions of this gun. There is the black version, which this is actually a tinifer finish, which I had one Glock that had tinifer finish, and that's like the best weapons coating. But it's not allowed to be done in the United States anymore, so they're basically not on any guns. This actually comes with a tinifer finish, and the hard chrome model, which is $100 more, which is a finish that is getting harder to find in the United States just because there aren't many people who can do it, and it's overtopped the tinifer finish. So truly a robust weapons finish, and the price they're asking for these things is going to be about $1,100 for the black one. So while that is a high price point, it's still reachable by many people who are, firearms enthusiasts and have been in the space for a minute. So what the gun is, looking at it, it actually truly is a 2011 style gun where it has the 2 points of connection to the frame. So this is actually the frame of the gun, just this little strip of steel that's up here, and then there's an aluminum grip that is bolted on in those two locations. So in theory, there could be more grip modules in the future for this style of gun if somebody were so inclined. It comes with a magwell. It is a 4-inch style gun. It's like a Commander with a flush cut barrel, so it's just about over 4 inches. Has a tri-top slide at the front with 2 slide ports on the side. They don't go through to the barrel, but they are there. They're kind of cool looking. It is optics cut, and it accepts plates. It's going to ship with 2 plates, the RMR plate and the RMSC cut plates. And the plates do come with a rear sight that co-witnesses with the front sight. As mentioned, it is a single action only gun, and it has an ambidextrous safety. And what's interesting is it actually comes with an extended slide release so that I can actually reach the slide relief with my thumb on the safety if I so chose and still have access to the trigger. Guys who shoot IDPA, they do slide lock reloads, and having that feature is something really nice. It's not an easy reach. It doesn't come as far back as, I might like it to, but it is more reachable than a traditional 1911 slide stop. The trigger quality on the gun, let's see if I can show you there. It has a little bit of take up with good resistance built in, and a very nice firm wall, and then a very nice release with just a tiny bit of over travel. It's set up very, very well. I wouldn't want to monkey with it. I think it's just great out of the box. Because I'm a really mysterious guy, I'm not going to tell you what the trigger weight is, but you're very, very resourceful and you'll figure it out. It does come with a magwell, and it's honestly a very generous magwell, but the issue is that the magazine base plates go basically flush, and while there are the cutouts on the side of the magwell, you don't really have good bite on those base plates. So, thicker bumper pads on the magazine that allows more to kind of stick out would probably be welcome if that's something you're concerned with. The weight of the gun is about 35 ounces, which is dangerously close to kind of the golden weight for a 5-inch gun, which is somewhere between 40 and 50 ounces. But because this is a 4-inch, it feels very much like a CZ75, which is a great shooting gun, and not the crazy models, but the CZ75, the OG. And those guns shoot great, and because it does have so much weight kind of concentrated, it's very well balanced, kind of sitting over the trigger guard there, and that is going to pay dividends when we go shoot it. Because it is the form factor that it is with the 4-inch barrel, but a full-size grip, it's kind of in a weird hybrid space of, is it a carry gun? Is it a range gun? And it does come with an additional mainspring housing pin where if you wanted to ditch the magwell and just go with the grip, it would make a more suitable carry gun. But if you were into upgrading your everyday carry, probably the best way to do so is with a Ridge wallet or key case. That's right, if you're not already carrying a skinny wallet in your front pocket, you are unnecessarily subjecting yourself to back pain. These aren't even the ones that I actually carry. These are the fancy ones they asked me to photograph. These are the ones that I actually carry and scope out all that pocket lint. That's right, I've been carrying a Ridge wallet for over a year and using the key case, and it eliminates the jingle of the keys in your pocket, and they don't poke you in the pocket when your leg's bent or anything like that. This is a really great solution for your keys. And right now you could join the Skinny Wallet gang because the Ridge is having their Black Friday sale. And if you use my link, ridge.com/humble, you can save up to 47% on your Ridge wallet and key case. Dudes are notoriously tough to shop for. So if you need to drop hints to your wife, or you've got a brother, father, friend that you guys exchange gifts for, the Ridge makes a really awesome gift because it's the kind of thing that improves quality of life, but it's not something somebody usually thinks about. Thank you for the Ridge for sponsoring the video, and let's get back to it. So welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm David, and as I mentioned, this is the Fusion XP Pro. It also says Ermox on it, but it is a pretty awesome gun. Full disclosure, I like to tell you guys how stuff shows up on the channel. This was sent in for video by the guys at Fusion, and that doesn't mean that they necessarily get a pass. I'll just go ahead and put negatives right here at the front because the negatives were actually pretty minor. The reliability of the gun was fantastic, but I found one load that 1911s with a ramped barrel absolutely hates to feed, and that is MaxTech, M-A-X-X-T-E-C-H. This gun did not want to feed the first round of MaxTech off the magazine. It would just kind of get hung up on the feed ramp. But I can say confidently that it was ammo related and not gun related because I had a bunch of guns out filming that day. I think I had 7 single action 9mm guns there. 5 of them struggled to feed the MaxTech, so it's not unique to this gun. It's just something about that projectile shape and the ramp with the chamber of a 9mm gun just didn't want to feed in these guys. The gun ran absolutely fine with my Buffalo Creek 115s, the New Republic 115s, and I had some other kind of range food just to test it out, and it was all fine. The only other issues I can report, and these are super minor, is that the grip texture is not as bitey as I would like it to be. Tinifer is a very slick finish. It's awesome. It's the hardest wearing weapons finish, but it does make things kind of slippery. So I could go with a more aggressive texture, but I'm a weirdo with leathery palms who likes the guns to basically assault the skin on my hands. And the same on the serrations. They're functional, but again, because the finish is so slick, it could just do a little bit more bite. But again, I like guns to, you know, completely tear up my hands. I want to be at risk of bleeding when I go to manipulate the firearm. And the final thing about it is that the ejection pattern of this gun is about to the 4:30 or 5 o'clock. You know, I generally prefer it more 3 to 4 o'clock, but it's in no danger of giving me brass to the face or anything like that. But there you go. And one thing that is kind of weird is because it is a 1911 grip angle, but it takes, you know, the steeper rake of a Glock magazine. And while that's interesting, it's because the grip angles like that just kind of focus on that line of that, whereas the Glock mag, if I hold it level as well, you can see that they're kind of not matching angles. So it did, you know, take notice when I was going to seat magazines that, you know, the magazine's at a different angle than the grip, which is something I also noticed on the LOK Arms Creator Evolution when I shot that earlier this year as well, because it does kind of the same thing. It's not really a negative per se, it's just something I noticed about it. I want to talk more about kind of how the gun kind of feels and interfaces with your hand, because when you get into sort of this price point in this style of firearm, it becomes almost like an emotional sort of thing where you want to like feel like you're being pampered by the gun, and it's like a super high quality gun. So from that perspective, when you put the gun in your hand, the sculpt of the magwell is very good. With my XL sized hands, it kind of forces my hand higher onto the frame. The undercut of the trigger guard kind of allows your fingers up under it a lot more. It feels, just working the controls and everything like that, like a premium firearm that commands the price point that it's being sold at. The finishing, just looking at it, just watching all the cuts on it, because there is a lot of machining going on the slide. Like if I rotate it in the light, you can kind of see it catch all those different things. It's a cool looking gun. The bull barrel that it's using is a nice Tinifer coated bull barrel, so it's going to be super long lasting with a full length guide rod. just moving the slide on the frame, it is very, very smooth. The springing is actually important. With a gun like this, you want the springing to kind of be in the zone where it's not too oversprung, but it has just enough to shoot hotter ammo. And I would say that they nailed it with this, because this gun doesn't have very much slide dip when you go to shoot it. The trigger, as I mentioned, is a very nice trigger and very impressive in its own right. The checkering on the front strap it's got a little bit of bite to it. It's not super aggressive. It's got kind of angles going on the grip where it's kind of an interesting looking thing. The grip safety is functioning, and the back strap doesn't really have all that much texture. It's enough to stay planted on your palm, but because of the sculpt of the beaver tail, you're going to be locked in with the strength from your, strong hand and support hand on the gun. It has a very good geometry to the gun. It feels like a good gun. And shooting the gun, as I mentioned, because the weight is about 35 ounces, the gun shoots very, very well. In slow fire, I was printing groups that I would expect to print with this style of gun. So the accuracy is exactly where you want it to be. Running the gun fast, what I did notice is that as the gun rotated, the mag release would kind of rotate into the palm of my support hand a little bit, but it was never hitting at an angle that caused magazines to drop out. I personally really like the weight of about 35 ounces on a 4-inch gun, because for a range gun that's 35 ounces, it's pretty awesome. Now, some people are going to want to know, how does it stack up against a 2011 style grip? So I have a Prodigy here, and I can say that the grip on the Prodigy is just a little bit fatter. It's a little bit broader across the back, whereas the XP Pro, it's just as long front to back, but it's just a little bit skinnier. So I think, smaller handed shooters are going to have an easier time with that trigger reach, because trigger reach is very generous. I could sink up to my first knuckle onto the trigger if I wanted to. Now, shooting the gun, magazine compatibility, I tested, 4 different types of Glock style magazines. Did the OEM Glocks, the KCIs that the gun ships with, the P mags, and some other generic Glock mag that I happen to have that I don't know what brand it is. All of the magazines functioned well, and even with, some of the longer mag tubes, it doesn't get in the way of the mag well. They lock in no problem, but the magazines, depending on the manufacturer, some of them kind of hang up in the chute a little bit. You can see this OEM tube does hang up in the chute. The KCI tube, however, doesn't hang in the chute. It just falls out, perfectly. This style of mag is what the gun ships with, the KCI, so maybe that's the play for these, because they're very, affordably priced. And just for completeness sake, here's the P mag. So it comes out okay. This hangs up a little bit more than the KCI, but not as much as the Glock mag. Now, this is an old Glock mag, so the tube may very well be disformed, but it just feels like it binds in the grip a bit more. They all fed and ran just fine. It's just, if you want the reliable dropping free, there you go. You can use your OEMs though, so don't worry. So as kind of mentioned, just the fit and finish of the gun, it is a very well-designed gun, and there are no finishing marks on the pistol whatsoever. The quality and the feel of the gun is such that it just looks and feels like a high-dollar gun. The one thing that's kind of interesting about 2011, guys, is we like to compare these guns to like the, super oversized and lap to fit type guns that are $6,000 or $7,000. This gun is a fraction of that, and as a result, it does have some tolerance built into the slide to frame fit, just like any, gun in the price point is pretty much the exact same on the Prodigy as well. But when it actually comes to functioning, the guns perform about the same as the higher end guns. It's just that little braggadocious little bit of the super hand fit stuff. I mean, it is a production gun. And in no way by calling it a production gun am I trying to dismiss the quality of the gun, because it is a very high quality gun. It's just not a gunsmith lap to fit gun. And one thing that is interesting about this gun, when I took it apart and was kind of examining it, seeing if the small parts were metal injection molded or not, they're not. They're completely tool steel, which is a premium feature. So let's talk about how we compare it to the Stealth Arms Platypus. And I actually have 2 of them. This is a loaner that was sent in a moment ago and hasn't made its way back yet, but this is the 2024 version of the SHOT Show of the Platypus, and this is the version that I spec'd out right after the 2023 SHOT Show. I've done videos on both of these guns. You can check those out for more information, but comparing just the shooting of these guns, this being a steel frame and the Platypus being kind of a mono grip frame, where the frame and rails is one piece, the aluminum frame of the Platypus is significantly lighter, and when I hold the guns kind of next to each other, it's immediately apparent that this gun has a few ounces. I think this is about 29 ounces. This one's like 31 ounces and this one is like 34, 35 ounces. So just looking at kind of the fit and finish, the Platypus feels like a higher end gun because the price tag is about 50% more than the XP Pro. And when I say that, all I'm saying is that the slide to frame fit is just a little bit tighter and maybe just a little bit smoother. And that's really kind of the difference. Both guns don't have any, you know, visible tooling marks or anything like that. All of the Platypus guns are Cerakote finishes, so you know what Cerakote does with repetitive use. Kind of, you know, thins out, then wears out on kind of the high areas where it makes contact with the holster, and generally the Tinifer finish does not. The Platypus has, you know, about a 6-month build time if you were to kind of spec one out, but it is a, you know, semi-custom gun, meaning that there's a whole bunch of options and you can, you know, assemble them on the gun that you want, but then you have to wait for it for about 6 months. Whereas this is an off-the-shelf kind of spec deal that comes just in, you know, 2 configurations, whether you get the hard chrome or the black, and that's it. But shooting the guns side by side, and you can see it in slow motion, especially comparing the XP Pro to the aluminum bushing barrel Commander that I built last year. The XP Pro has less muzzle oscillation. It's not hitting in the hand nearly as hard. You can't see that on video, but I can tell you from behind the gun that the steel frame gun doesn't feel like it's hitting in the hand quite as hard. Now, comparing it against the 5-inch version of the gun, I would say that the slide action, because this is a Commander length slide, is a little bit faster, but the dot lift is roughly the same as the 5-inch gun. And the 5-inch gun has the Platypus prickle texture, which is the kind of a superior grip texture. So the gun really does stay sort of unified in your support hand palm. So you're able to mitigate the fact that it is an aluminum frame with how it's going to jump, but this gun really did kind of keep up with it. I prefer faster cycling guns. I actually really like the Commander slide length guns just as a preference because I shoot open guns. I like the faster slide action, and this definitely has it. So if I were to summarize it, I would say let your emotions guide you and go towards the one that you want, and then let that be tempered by your wallet and your patience. So the XP Pro is a pretty awesome offering. I'm excited that, you know, people are doing more things with this platform of guns and introducing it at a quality and price point where a lot of people can get into it and get happy. If you've got further questions, please use the comments below. And if you've watched more than one of my videos, consider subscribing. And a good video to watch might be either one of these videos on the Platypus. I've got one on this one and this one. You can watch those here.